Hey, amazing viewers, I love connecting with you all around the world. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share will leave you inspired and ready to take control of your own life. In today's story, you'll hear about an incredible twist that no one saw coming. Also, if this is your first time here, press the subscribe button and join our incredible journey. Have you ever been in a situation where everything was going perfectly fine, only for one unexpected moment to change the course of your life? Zara Johnson, a 21-year-old woman on her way back home after a semester abroad, was about to face such a moment, one that would challenge her sense of self, her strength, and her resilience. It was an ordinary day, and Zara felt a sense of excitement building up as she neared the airport. She had just spent months immersed in a different culture, learning and growing, and now she was heading home to share her experiences and dreams with her family. She was ready for the next chapter of her life, the next step toward her ambitions. But she could never have predicted the challenge that was about to unfold. Zara stood in the line at the check-in counter, her first-class ticket in hand, ready to face the routine process of airport check-ins. There was nothing extraordinary about this moment, or so she thought. She was confident, poised, and well-prepared. She had traveled internationally before, always with the feeling that the world was hers to explore, and the journey was just another step in the path she was carving for herself. But as she approached the counter, Zara's confidence was met with an unexpected coolness. Tiffany, the flight attendant behind the counter, gave her a glance that didn't quite feel right. It wasn't just a standard professional look. It was different. It was a look of judgment, a look that Zara had become all too familiar with. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something about the way Tiffany's eyes lingered on her made her feel out of place. As Zara handed over her passport and ticket, she could feel the weight of those subtle assumptions hanging in the air. Tiffany's smile seemed thin, almost forced, and her words followed suit. "I'm sorry, but your ticket isn't in the system," she said, her tone sharp and dismissive. Zara blinked, a brief moment of confusion washing over her. Her ticket should have been valid. She had checked it online. This was supposed to be a smooth process. But instead of a simple resolution, Tiffany didn't seem interested in listening. She gestured for Zara to step aside. "Maybe if you knew how to book a flight properly, you wouldn't be causing all this trouble," she said, loud enough for the passengers nearby to hear. Zara's stomach churned. The words hung in the air, and she felt her pulse quicken. The weight of the accusation wasn't just about a ticket. It was about her very presence there, as if Zara didn't belong in this space, as if she was out of place in this world of sleek uniforms and polished marble floors. Her heart raced, but she kept her composure, trying to hold on to her dignity. She had worked hard to be here, to be a part of this world, to be seen and respected. But then it happened. Tiffany grabbed her passport with a cold, calculated motion and, without a word, ripped it in half. Time seemed to freeze for a moment. The sound of the rip echoed in Zara's ears as her heart dropped into her stomach. Her identity, her proof of who she was now nothing more than scraps in a stranger's hands. She was stunned, frozen in disbelief. This couldn't be real. This wasn't supposed to happen. Around her, the airport fell silent. The buzzing hum of conversations faded, and for just a moment, all that existed in the world was Zara, Tiffany, and the torn pieces of her passport. The weight of it all began to settle in. The injustice, the cruelty, the humiliation. Zara's eyes flicked around. Some passengers whispered. Others pulled out their phones, capturing the moment like it was some kind of spectacle. She could feel their eyes on her, and for the first time in a long time, Zara felt exposed. But this moment was only the beginning. Zara wasn't going to let this go quietly. Something in her snapped as she looked down at the broken pieces of her identity. This wasn't just about a passport. This wasn't just about a misunderstanding. It was about respect. It was about standing up for who she was. And as the crowd began to murmur, as the tension in the air grew thicker, Zara knew she had to make a choice. Would she remain silent, or would she fight back, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been made to feel less than because of assumptions, stereotypes, or prejudice. Zara took a deep breath and steadied herself. This was just the beginning, and the story that was unfolding would change everything. Have you ever found yourself standing at a crossroads, not knowing whether to fight or let go, but knowing deep down that what happens next will define who you are? Zara stood there, her heart racing, as the torn pieces of her passport scattered across the counter. The sharp, cold stare of Tiffany still lingered in the air. The rip of the passport was more than just an action. It was a symbol of something deeper, something more painful. This wasn't just a routine travel inconvenience anymore. It was a battle, not just for her passport, but for her dignity and her identity. The room was alive with whispers and the quiet hum of airport activity, but to Zara, it all felt like it was happening in slow motion. She was being watched, judged, but still, something inside her told her this was not the moment to let anger take control. She had been in situations like this before, moments where the weight of being different felt unbearable, moments when small prejudices built up and had the power to break you. But Zara had learned to hold her ground. She had to. It was the only way to survive in a world that sometimes seemed to overlook her efforts, her hard work, and her dreams. "Your passport is a security risk," Tiffany said, her voice flat, as if Zara's existence was a problem she was too tired to deal with. Zara wanted to speak out, to tell her that she had worked harder than anyone, that this wasn't fair, but instead, she bit her tongue. She had been here before. Her whole life had prepared her for this moment. This wasn't about winning in the traditional sense. It was about maintaining the strength to stand tall, even when the world seemed to press against you. As Tiffany's smug expression remained unchanged, Zara forced herself to take a breath. Her thoughts were racing, but she knew that reacting with anger, with frustration, would only give Tiffany the power she wanted. Zara had been underestimated, dismissed and dismissed again, by teachers, by peers, by strangers. But every time, she had risen above it. She wasn't going to let Tiffany be another hurdle in her path. No, today, Zara would stand for something greater. She would stand for every person who had been overlooked, every individual who had ever been made to feel less than. "I'll resolve this with management," Zara said calmly, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. Tiffany barely acknowledged her words as she gestured for Zara to step aside, as if the issue was already resolved. But for Zara, it wasn't. This was just the beginning. The sense of injustice burned inside her, but she didn't allow it to overwhelm her. She knew she had to keep her composure. She could fight back with grace or with fire. And today, she chose grace. She chose to be the bigger person, even when the world wasn't being kind to her. As Zara stepped away from the counter, she could feel the weight of every judgment, every whisper, every assumption on her shoulders. She glanced around, noticing the others in the airport. Some avoided her gaze, others looked at her with pity. No one spoke up. No one defended her. And in that moment, Zara realized something crucial. This wasn't just about her. This was about everyone who had ever been made to feel small, to feel as if they didn't belong. But Zara was done staying silent. She wasn't going to let this moment define her. She wasn't going to let anyone make her feel like she didn't have a voice. This was her story, and Zara had every intention of telling it. She walked away from the gate, her mind racing, her chest tight, but there was a new resolve in her heart. She wasn't going to just walk away from this injustice. She was going to make sure it would never happen again. And so, as Zara found a quiet space in the airport to collect her thoughts, something changed. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced, for everyone who had ever been dismissed. This wasn't just about a torn passport. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her identity, and her right to exist in this world without being judged or underestimated. And today, Zara wasn't going to let that right slip through her fingers. This was her turning point, and the world was about to see what happened when you finally stood up for yourself, no matter the cost. Have you ever faced a moment that forced you to make a choice between standing up for yourself and walking away? Zara stood there, her heart still pounding from the earlier confrontation, but now something inside her had shifted. It wasn't just about the torn passport or the disrespectful flight attendant anymore. This was about something much bigger, something that would resonate with everyone who had ever felt unseen, unheard, or unworthy. As she walked through the bustling airport, the weight of the moment hung heavy on her shoulders. The uncertainty, the frustration, and the anger were all still there, but so was the realization that this was her chance to make a difference. Not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been treated unfairly. Zara knew she had a voice, and today, she wasn't going to let it be silenced. She wasn't just a passenger. She was a person with dreams, with rights, and with a future. She took a deep breath and pulled out her phone, dialing the one person she had avoided reaching out to until now. Her father. Zara's father was the CEO of the very airline she was flying with. It had always been something she kept separate from her personal journey. She had worked tirelessly to make her own way, to build her reputation on her own terms. But now, in this moment, Zara realized that it wasn't about using her father's position as a crutch. It was about using the resources available to her to right a wrong. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a moment of strength, of recognizing that sometimes standing up for what's right means leveraging the power you have to make a change. When her father answered the phone, Zara took a moment to gather her thoughts. "Dad," she began, her voice steady, but with a hint of emotion, "I need your help." She explained the situation, the mistreatment, the judgment, the tearing of her passport. And as she spoke, a sense of clarity washed over her. This wasn't just about this one instance. It was about confronting a system that allowed this type of prejudice to exist unchecked. Her father listened, his voice calm and understanding as he promised to look into the matter immediately. But for Zara, the phone call wasn't just about fixing this one incident. It was a realization that sometimes change starts from within. Sometimes it takes someone who is willing to speak up, to confront the uncomfortable truths, to create a shift. As the conversation ended, Zara felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about getting her passport back. This was about standing up against something much bigger, about challenging the assumptions, the stereotypes, and the prejudices that we encounter every day. It was about making sure that no one else had to endure what she had just gone through. Zara walked toward the gate with her head held high. She wasn't just walking to board a flight anymore. She was walking toward a future where her voice mattered, where she had the power to change the narrative. And as she walked, she realized that this was a moment that could inspire others. She wasn't alone in this fight. Every person who had ever felt dismissed, overlooked, or undervalued could take a stand with her. This wasn't just Zara's story. It was the story of anyone who had ever been told they didn't belong, anyone who had ever been made to feel like they didn't matter. It was a story of strength, resilience, and the unwavering belief that we all deserve respect. Zara wasn't just reclaiming her identity. She was reclaiming her power. And in doing so, she was paving the way for others to do the same. As Zara finally boarded her flight, she realized that this was just the beginning. A small, seemingly insignificant moment at an airport had sparked something much larger. It was a reminder that we all have the power to stand up for ourselves and for others. We all have the power to change the world, one act of courage at a time. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to let anyone define you. Because when you stand up, when you speak out, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for a world that sees you, hears you, and values you for who you truly are.